being able to see somebody like me back then would have done, I probably would have come out much, much sooner. I would have felt more comfortable to be who I was meant to be.
Welcome back to Alphabet Radio. I'm 3G, and this series is all about talking to LGBTQ plus people who are a part of the radio industry and some that are no longer a part of the radio industry. We want to talk to everybody in this because queer people in radio traditionally have not really gotten the platforms that they have, that their straight peers have, and especially their cis peers have. So I wanted to bring on somebody who is also, who is not only a part of the LGBTQ plus community, but she is also a very good friend of mine that I have known for many, many years. And so, Jenna Daugherty, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much, Greg, for having me on today. Or should I call you 3G? I guess I get the old friend credit. I can call you Greg.
Call me whatever you want. It's totally okay.
Just don't call me late for dinner.
I'm going to tell you, there's going to be a lot of terrible puns here. So we're just going to have to jump right into it. So Jenna and I know each other, have known each other for a long time. She and I went to the same college in radio. We both went to KOHL. Now, if you want to tell me a little bit about how you got into radio, and then we'll kind of talk a little bit about KOHL.
Man, it was so long ago. I feel so old now. It was around the late 2000s, specifically 2007, when the Woody Show was coming in to San Francisco. It's a little bit unfortunate now. I have mixed feelings about that show, but that'll be for another day. But they were the show that got me into radio. It was just real. Everybody there was just sitting around, just talking whatever they felt. They kept it real. And I loved it. It was hilarious. It was fresh. And I'd always thought about getting into radio. I was in theater in high school and I did choir. I'm very much a performer, a people-friendly person. I love just chat, right? So I was kind of in a funk. I had dropped out of school because I was college, because I was classic, like young and in my 20s. I didn't know what I was doing with myself. And of course, I was my former self back then. And so this was far before I transitioned and became my true self. And it was part of my journey of how it led to my true self, right? And so around 2009, I'd been unemployed from the 2008 market crash, because who wasn't?
All of us got hit by it. All of us. We came into the worst market in history in like 50 years. And then so we couldn't buy a house. And then there was like a bunch of other stuff everything sucks for millennials.
Yeah, I mean, if we didn't spend $5 a day at Starbucks, we could have a house, right?
It's a lot of avocado toast is what
we're and I hate avocado toast, so what's my excuse? And so I don't remember actually who told me about KOHL. I always listened to it. I thought it was cool. I never realized it was a college station because it was so professional. And so weird. I don't remember, but I hopped in the program fall of 2009. And that was a program that changed my life. I met Tom and Bob, and just Greg knows they are just the absolute best professionals to the end. And you learned everything there. It was so fun. And I really felt like I had found my calling. And I graduated technically, right, as a certificate, whatever, around 2011. And that was when I got my first job in radio. But before that, I meant to say, you were one of my teachers.
Yeah. Yep. Because I had been doing that. They had me doing that because I started at KOHL in 2005, and they had me training people on air at by the next semester. It was ridiculous. So, but anyway,
it was. But you were good though. You really were, because you're so well. I just remember thinking, he has to be my age. But damn, he knows his stuff. And so I'm just I better pick it up. And so everybody there just not only do they push you, but they do it because they want you to succeed. And they really do. Like, as soon as I was done with the program, they put me in a station. And I had picked this old rundown news station. It is now, I don't want to be so rude about it. It is a legendary station, but it was kind of on its way out. And I've always been very socially active. And I always paid attention to the news. And so I thought, well, this is a good first step. It's not the ideal station that I wanted to get into, but it was call letters on your resume, and it was a foot in the door in commercial radio.
And remind me again, this was KLIV.
1590 KLIV. Mm-hmm. Yes, it had started out as a top 40 rock station back in 1965 and had gone through many format changes. By the time I got there, it was like, I felt like it was an episode of The Office, because everything... First off, I didn't realize that my first station was going to be like less up-to-date equipment than my college station, which was mind blown. And someone there, like my first day, literally had come up to me and said, like, "Hey, you should start looking somewhere else to work, because this place probably going to shut down." And I was like,
that's always a good sign.
That's always a good sign, you know. It's like, and that's why I said it's like The Office. It was like always that threat of like, when's it going to shut down? And I got a good 5 years out of it. I quickly moved my way up. I started like everybody else at the bottom, Saturdays and Sundays, 6 a.m. to 10 a.m.
Oh, that's a brutal shift.
Absolutely brutal, doing part-time traffic and weather. And I had told my eventually would-be boss in the interview, like, I can edit phone calls, I can, put together music vlogs and do commercials, blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. And I said, whatever you can give me, please. And so not too long, in the first few months of my tenure there, he was like, "So we got this show, it's pretty simple. You want to produce it?" I'm like, "Yes, please give it to me." Yeah, that's the cool thing. I will tell you guys, if you see a station that's kind of and you're like, well, it's not Wild 94.9 or it's not 99.7 Hour or whatever, who cares? You get so much opportunity in a smaller station. Mm-hmm. And that was true for me. I picked up this one easy show, and then before you knew it, I was picking up another show. I was producing commercials. I was writing them. I was voicing them. And then eventually I started doing news, even though I had no journalism background. And my boss just liked the way I write. And so by the time the station blew up in 2016, I was basically the main producer. And I was still doing on air because that was what I really liked to do. But I also found that I really liked producing. It's super fun. And so I was like really set on, I thought that this was going to be my career. And I'd kind of short-circuited myself in the sense that the year before the station shut down was when I came out. And so when the station blew up the next year, I had gotten a year's severance, which was crazy.
It's really, really nice.
Really, really nice. And I'd initially come out as a cross-dresser, which meant that I was living as both genders. And I was giving people close to me, family, close friends, the time to kind of adjust while I was figuring everything out, because I knew that person was going to be gone and Jenna was going to be full-time. And so when the station blew up, I had a year's worth of money, and I said, it's going to kind of suck to say goodbye to broadcasting, but right now, this is what I want. This is who I am. I have to do this. And so I decided to put everything on hold and hopefully maybe come back to radio at a later time. That was 7 years ago. So, but I don't regret it one bit. I miss the hell out of broadcasting for sure. But right now I'm on such a more important path now. And, I would love to get back into broadcasting at some point, but right now my path is so much more about social activism and trying to, I mean, basically I call myself an aspiring trans activist because I have not done much yet in the realm of activism, but I feel like I am just starting to get my feet under me. Mm-hmm. So that is a whole different story, and I'm really, really excited.
I think what this really illustrates, to me at least, is just how powerful having resources can be for your mental health and for bettering yourself. Because having that year's worth of severance really allowed you to take some time and to figure yourself out and then move on and move on to bigger and better things immediately after, when most radio companies don't even offer severance. Most of them don't. I mean, some of them do, and some of them offer severance, and that severance package is so minuscule as to be, it's like, well, we'll give you a week's severance. How long have you worked here? 10 years? Well, that's too bad.
It's half a day for every year, so.
But this also goes back to like how radio has changed just in the last 30 years since, what, 1996?
Yeah.
From the Telecommunications Act to now, seeing how radio has become a mom and pop production to a multinational corporation production. And we have so many companies now that don't think about the welfare of their employees. They think about what their bottom line is and how only to help their investors. Exactly. They only think about the bottom dollar. So it's really frustrating to see the industry, especially when, we as queer people in the industry need resources. We need more resources than our straight peers because we're not given as much of an opportunity to succeed. And it really infuriates me that you've not been able to find another radio gig in 7 years.
To be fair to your audience, I have not been looking.
The other thing about that is the reason why you haven't been looking is because it does not pay.
Yeah.
I got to tell you, like the Bay Area where you and I both live, it is $30,000 a year for rent. Just rent, not utilities, nothing else.
I live with a roommate. I pay $1,600 a month.
My partner and I live together, and we split the rent, and it's still a lot of money.
Yeah.
So working in radio is unfortunately the situation where, you want to be this active person. You want to go and you want to do things, and hey, you want to go places. And there's a couple of people in radio that have that opportunity. Most of them are not queer.
No.
Most of them are, and I mean, good on them. It's fantastic to see them working. But at the same time, like there's so much more that we could be doing. You and I as out of work radio queers.
Yeah.
Like there's so much more that we could be doing to reach an audience. There's so much more that you and I could be doing to help build up these communities that we live in, but we're not given that opportunity because either companies are not paying well enough to hire us, or we're just not given that opportunity anymore.
And you brought up the Telecommunications Act. I mean, that is really just like, you hit the nail on the head. Like, I mean, if we really want to get technical about it, it's Reaganomics.
Yeah, for sure.
That's set in motion, basically late stage capitalism. All these big corporations started just taking a bunch of money at the expense of the working and middle class. And so they were finding ways to kind of just discard the working and middle class and make money without an actual workforce, right? I mean, since the Telecommunications Act, voice tracking became huge, and that decimated, right? Because when you look at radio pre-voice track and then post-voice track, most people that are successful in radio came in pre-voice track, right? It kind of dwindled over the past 30 years. You definitely have people that are making their way up in radio now, but it is not anywhere near what it was. And it's just, and now with this threat of AI, I don't know how much that is going to play into things, but it's just like they're sacrificing the one-on-one relationship for just more money. And it's like at some point, like, yeah, they've proven that they can make a ton of money still, but like there's a reason why it's just not the same. Yeah. Like it was so much different when you had a personality, right? Does anybody even know what a personality is anymore?
No, we call them influencers now.
Oh my God. Yes, influencers, right? Don't even get me started on that whole thing.
I still maintain, and I fully believe this. I don't think influencer is a bad word, and I do believe that radio people were the original influencers in the early 20th century.
Oh, without a doubt.
Like,
Yeah.
we were the tastemakers. We were the people that were pushing new records. Now there was a lot of this going around.
Payola,
doing
I'm
the money
sure.
sign.
Yeah.
There was a lot of money and a lot of greased palms in the early days of radio, and as we saw, but what's wild to me is that the money has only gotten bigger and bigger, and many of these companies, the investors, are making millions of dollars. You look at how much money, not to throw any particular company under the bus, but you look at how much money Bob Prophet is making.
iHeartRadio?
Yeah, or David J. Field. How much?
Oh, you're talking about actual individuals.
These are actual individuals. So these are actual CEOs of radio companies. But if you look at how much money they're making compared to the average salary of their employees and the average salary of a board operator or a full-time on-air talent, nobody has just one job anymore. It's all multiple jobs. But you look at those, and it's infuriating.
Oh, understatement.
Especially with Odyssey's stock currently in the trash right now.
And then the people that are actually providing the content and doing the labor for them, they're like, can we get some crumbs that fall off the table? Maybe. It's just like, how do it is outrageous. It's like they forget that, like, in order to, like, have a successful product, you have to invest in your workforce. But exactly. when they can bypass their workforce and make tons of money, yeah, okay, cool. You got lots of money, but your reputation is going to suffer because, I mean, at some point, why don't you just put on your Spotify if you're not really going to have any personality?
Yeah.
Or just, it's so limited that it's just like, blah.
I don't even know if I want to open the can of worms that is AI radio, which, Futuri has launched their thing. It's called Radio GPT, and it's basically like regurgitating stories using computerized voices. But the stories that they're regurgitating are all bottom of the barrel stuff. It's all rage bait clicks is all it is. It's not actual, like, content that people are going to actually communicate with and actually engage with, versus having somebody on air who is queer and being able to talk about their experiences coming out or enjoying Pride Month in San Jose, enjoying Pride Month in Fremont, enjoying Pride Month in San Francisco or in Sacramento or in Tallahassee, Florida, or in Nashville, Tennessee, or in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Enjoying those experiences and relating to your audience on a deep and personal level is so much more important than whatever the Kardashians are doing, which just so happens to be the number one clicked on story of the day.
It's almost like people like to have a sense of community.
Yeah, right? And I think this brings me back to the original purpose of this podcast, which is about representation in media. Think about how different your life would be if there was a trans woman on the air.
Oh my God.
We were getting into radio in the late 2000s. How different would that be if I had experienced a bisexual on the air at that time and I knew they were? My life would have been completely changed.
Oh my God. I mean, the only trans representation I had growing up in high school, it was a horrific story about a trans girl who was murdered in Newark, here, one city over from me. That was the first time I ever saw anybody in my life. Or I was just like, oh my God, this is actually real. It was an incredibly unfortunate scenario. The people that did it obviously were horrific. But, it was just like, that's how messed up it is. It's just like, that's the first time in real life I had, like, some inspiration. And it was from an incredibly tragic and horrific story. Just like you said, being able to see somebody like me back then would have done, I probably would have come out much, much sooner. I would have felt more comfortable to be who I was meant to be.
I think about, like, just off the top of my head, I can only think of maybe a handful of trans people that are on the air right now that actually have radio shows. Like, that identity is, and like non-binary people, I can't even think of a single one. I'm sure I'm sure, but, like, that's also why representation is so important. When conservatives love yelling about affirmative action, and they love talking about that as some massive boogeyman. But representation is so extremely important in almost every field, and doubly so with extremely highly visible fields. We're just people. We're just humans that are trying to exist, trying to survive day to day. We're not doing anything to hurt anyone. And just existing, just merely existing, is an act of normalization in the broader populace. Me being here and having a platform and saying, hi, I'm Greg, I'm bisexual, I had a radio show for a while, don't anymore, but now I'm training the next generation of queer people and even in straight people as well, but I'm training the next generation of radio professionals in what the industry is like. And it's terrifying to me to know that especially femme-presenting people have such a hard time, and minorities have such a hard time in the radio industry because of how cisgendered, heterosexual, and white the radio industry has been traditionally for over a century.
And still is, and that's what makes it so sad, you know? And that's why, like, right now in my life, I don't really feel necessary the drive to go back into broadcasting. I would love to, but you brought up just all the just horrific, inhumane, dehumanizing, not only just legislation, but the entire right-wing media apparatus, you know, specifically us. They are just unhinged, and they are just so obsessed with dehumanizing us because they want to drive us out of society. They don't want us to exist. And so right now in my life, my activism is my calling because I just feel like nothing else is even as important. If I'm not able to exist, I can't work in radio. So that's why I feel really called to do activism. And I'm really, really proud of the fact that I did something recently that I hope is going to be able to start to bridge the gap. You know, I did an interview with quick little background on me. I was forced really into a fundamentalist homeschooled Christian conservative household. Up until I was in 8th grade. Then I finally got to go to school, which was a private Christian school, not much better, but better than being homeschooled, right? And one of the few bands, because I only could listen to Christian music growing up, one of the few bands that made me feel like I was able to be myself was a Christian ska band called Five Iron Frenzy. And I had an interview with a member of that band, Leonore, and it was all about bridging the gap between Christians and trans people. And I really feel like, I don't know if it's really going to take me anywhere big, but it's the first thing that I'm proud of in my activist journey, because it is an incredibly powerful and much needed conversation, I think, for everything that's going on right now, because we both really show that we really respect each other. And the people that are in power claim to have the same religious beliefs as her, but she's like, that's not me. I love all people. I want all people to be free. And so I'm just really hoping that, because it seemed like things were getting better for us, and then the pendulum really took hold, and now it's just like we're public enemy number one, especially us in the trans community. And up until I feel like I've done my duty, like I'll probably get back into broadcasting at some point, but right now I'm a lot more focused on trying to make sure that we can just exist, that we can just live without having a bunch of people who don't know about us that talk in circles with dehumanizing talking points, who never talk to a trans person or a bi person or a gay person, to be able to say, hey, these people are just normal and maybe we should give them a shot.
If you could choose any type of activism, what kind of activism would you choose?
Public office. I know it's crazy, but I have a dream.
No, I'd support that 100%. Yeah.
Thank you. No, I mean, like since high school, I've wanted to run for president. And so now I don't say that very often because it is a long shot, especially for someone like me. Mm-hmm. And even still, I have to admit that I have privileges as a white, cis-passing trans woman. Like, the people that take the brunt of our discrimination and abuse are Black trans women. Mm-hmm. And so while I'm still an incredibly marginalized group, I still try to keep as much of a perspective as I can.
Yeah.
And so will I ever make it to the presidency? Who knows? But like, I feel like I am starting to get my feet under me, and I'm working with a nonprofit right now that helps the unhoused here in Fremont and making connections with local governments. So who knows? I see that as my path.
That sounds amazing. Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah. That. Gosh.
I mean, I'm almost pretty sure that's where I'm going. You know, I'm coming up on my bottom surgery here very soon, and it's really like it's just I'm full of so many emotions, because it's like I'm so happy, I'm so just euphoric, but I'm also scared, and I am so anxious. And it's just, there's so many different emotions that I can't even begin to process. And on top of all that, I'm like, once I'm done with it, I put my whole life on hold for this. What am I going to be doing? You know?
What's next?
What's next? When you're a baby trans, you don't know if and when you're going to get these opportunities. And so I had 3 major goals for my physical transition. First was my boobs, then my facial feminization surgery, and then my bottom surgery. I've done 2 out of the 3. I mean, it's unreal. And so I have all these different emotions. It's physically exhausting just to do the bottom surgery prep, but then I'm thinking about my future, because I'm at the light of the end of the tunnel, and that's something as you start out as a trans person, you don't think that's ever going to happen. It's nuts. So yeah, I am at just the most gigantic crossroads, but I'm at the same time, though, I am really comfortable, and I am really calm about it for the most part, and it's exciting, and I feel like I can take on the world.
It's really nice to live in a state that actually values your existence.
It really is, you know, and it kind of gives me and I know that it might be crazy to say or whatever, but it gives me a little bit of survivor's guilt. And that's why I feel obligated to try and use my privilege as a white, cis-passing trans woman who lives in a blue state. Because there was a point early in the year where I was getting depressed, as I'm sure you were. Just watching every state, bill after bill after bill. It's up to 500 something bills now.
I think it's up to 650. Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
I know.
It's just so sinister, and it's so evil. And then you have the most sinister of all, like Florida and Texas with DeSantis and Greg Abbott. And these people are they're monsters. Florida passed a bill that's going to kidnap trans kids, force them to live in homes that are going to detransition them, and throw their affirming parents in jail. I mean, don't tell me that is not attempted genocide.
No, it 100% is. That's the terrifying thing about it, is that it 100% is, and it's like, you don't know. What do you do in this situation? Well, you do what you can to reach out to communities and to help uplift people in marginalized communities. And I hate that that's the only solution, but it's the only solution that we have. Finding pathways to help trans people that live in Texas and that live in Mississippi, and live in Louisiana and Georgia and Florida, and everywhere, Tennessee, where all of these terrible bills are being passed. We just have to find mutual aid organizations in those areas and support them as best we can, because they're the ones that are going to take the brunt of the assault on our rights, and they're going to help the people on the ground that need the help. So the last question, shifting gears and hopefully into a more positive note. If you could give any advice to a queer person that is or wants to get into radio, what advice would you give them?
Don't be afraid to be yourself ever. Even if you feel like it's going to backfire on you. you're not going to get this specific promotion that you want, or you're not going to get this specific job. You're going to look back on your life and you're going to say, man, I wish I would have done that. What if I had done that? What would have been? And it's hard. Don't get me wrong. It's very hard. But what's even worse is sitting there saying, I could have done something to be different, to make myself stand out, and maybe change something. But instead, I decided to let fear run my life. And that is what I think is so beautiful about the queer community, is that it's not that we're not afraid. It's just that we know that this life that was given to us, that was chosen for us, does not satisfy us. And so we will face the fear head on if it means that we personally are going to be happy. And I really do truly feel, and that's why I try to reach out across the aisle to cis-hets and Christians and anybody that will listen. Once they see our humanity, once they get rid of all these dehumanizing talking points from unhinged bigots that don't want anything to do with us, that don't want us to exist, and they just see us for who we are, it's hard to not see us as anything less than human. Right now, so many people don't see us as human, and so it's easy for them to disconnect their emotions and their empathy for what should be another just human being. We're all pretty much working class. If we're going to have an enemy, it's going to be the top 1%, right? We should be going for that. But, if not even doing divisive talking points aside, we're human beings. We should just love each other. And that's all we care about. We just want to live.
I think that's a great place to end, with this feeling of hope and community and exactly what we should be doing in the future. Jenna Daugherty is a former radio person, but is also one of my favorite people in the whole heckin' wide world. You're one of my best friends. I love you very much, my friend. If you're not already following Jenna, please go and follow her on Instagram. She's wonderful. She is a trans activist, and she's awesome. And also go check out the interview that she did with the member of Five Iron Frenzy. That was really, really, really good. Just a fantastic interview. I'll make sure that that's linked in the show notes below.
Make sure you grab a box of tissues.
I was definitely crying during that interview.
It's no, I love it because it's one of the reasons why I'm so proud of it. It's just, it's so heartfelt, it's so genuine, and it's so honest. And I was so incredibly just impressed by how much she respected us. You're going to see a lot of things that you wish you could see in the rest of society in that interview.
It's heartwarming to know that we do have allies.
It really is. Like it's such an honor that you call me, one of your favorite people in the world, because I love you so much too. You're one of my favorite people in the world. And, we've just only gotten so much closer as we both have owned our queer identities. And I really love it.
It's amazing how community brings people together, right?
It really does.
Yeah. I think that's a great point to end on. Jenna, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for letting me be hilarious and have so much fun on your show.
I'm absolutely crying now, just FYI.